Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a pretty basic netting using Adobe Illustrator and how to kind of create a grid in order to make it nice and accurate. So let's get started. First things first, I've got a nice A3 blank setup in my Illustrator file. I want to work A3 because often when nettings are folded out, they can be quite large and we want to make sure we have enough space to complete our design. Before I even get started drawing the netting, I want to do a couple of things for the initial setup. First, I'd like to have a reference image whenever I'm creating a design. So I've got my drawing of my netting that I have done, and I'm just going to place a copy of it over here in the gray workspace. That means if I save it as a PDF, it won't be saved and it won't be printed out. Plus I can always delete it later. It's just going to be there as a bit of a reference. Before I even get started drawing, I'm also going to create a grid on my page. To do this, you go to Preferences, which is in the Edit part at the top of the screen, and then you're going to go to Units first. We're going to make sure that our units that we're using in our file are millimeters for general and stroke, and then for type, I like to keep it as points just to keep it nice and consistent. Before we even hit OK, we're going to go to Guides and Grid, and we're going to really focus on the grid section here. I like to create a grid with a color that will contrast against white. So I like to use light red, but you can use light blue or light gray or any color that you think works for you. We're also going to use the style of lines rather than dots, and we're going to have a grid line of 10 millimeters. We're then going to have subdivisions of 10, and what that means is that every little square will be divided into 10 equal parts, and we'll have a look at what that means shortly. I'm going to hit OK, and as you can see, the grid doesn't appear straight away. In order to turn on the grid, there's two things that you can do. You can go to View at the top of the screen, and then hit Show Grid, which is down the bottom here. When you click that, we can see that the grid has popped up. I like to work a little bit quicker in Illustrator, so I like to use Control and quotation marks on my keyboard to turn it on and off relatively quickly, which helps me to monitor how my work is going and how accurate it is. When we zoom in on our grid like so, we can see that these larger solid lines are 10 squares wide and 10 squares high. That's a 10 millimeter by 10 millimeter square, or a centimeter by a centimeter. And every single one of these little squares is 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, which means that we can be accurate to the nearest millimeter in all our designs, which is the way we like to work. Now that I've got my grid, I can actually begin to draw my netting, and I've got my reference image there, so I'm going to use it. There are a couple of things that you can do to draw your netting. You can use the pen tool, obviously, to click and create your custom shape, particularly if it's like hexagonal or triangular or has curves. Mine's quite square, so I'm going to use the rectangle tool in my toolbar. To do this, you can simply click and drag to be the right size. Mine's going to be about 6 centimeters wide by about 12 centimeters high. I'm going to click and let that go. That can be adjusted later using the selection tool or the black arrow. For my shapes, I like to make sure that it doesn't have a white fill like this because I want to see the grid. I want to turn off the white fill and I just want a nice black outline like so. It allows me to see the grid underneath, so I can then make adjustments like this where I want to line it up a little bit better with the grid. So now I think that's closer to 6 centimeters wide, which is what I need. If you want to be super accurate, when you use your rectangle or shape tool, you can simply click on the page and you can enter the measurements that you need. For my next square, I'm going to make it 120 millimeters wide and 120 millimeters high. And I'm going to hit OK. And as we can see, that makes a nice, consistent shape, and I can use that to construct the rest of my design. The cool thing about working in Illustrator again is if you make your design and it duplicates, I can just select both of these shapes and then holding Control and Alt, I can drag a copy of them out over to the left, or the right, sorry. My netting's coming together relatively quick. There's a few more things that I need to add, particularly the top and bottom panels, and I also need to add the tabs. I'm going to use my shape tool to construct the shape that I need, which is 4 centimeters high and 12 wide, and I'm going to do the same over here. So keeping it nice and consistent, using my grid as best I can. The bottom panel is going to be 6 centimeters high and 12 wide because it's going to take up the whole base. And as we can see on my drawing, my top panels here have a little tab, which will be tucked into this little slot there. So I'm going to draw that tab now. Whenever I draw a tab, I like to click to start with the pen tool, and I like to hold down Shift to keep the line on a 45-degree angle. I then make them about 1 centimeter wide because I think that's plenty of space. I click, I then decide how wide my tab's going to be. This one's going to be 2 centimeters wide using the grid. Hold down the shift key again to keep it on a 45-degree angle. Click that, and then I like to end my tab where I've started, closing the shape, making it one solid piece. I'm then going to create the little slot where my my little tab will go. And I'm going to create the tabs for the rest of my design, which are going to be on the base here and on the left-hand side. So holding down shift, keeping it on a 45-degree angle as best as I can. Oh, made a mistake. It's going to be there. Like so. And making sure I connect my shape back up at the end. It's okay if the lines overlap a little bit. We'll show how we can get around that later on. And then finally, I need one more tab in order to make sure my shape will close when I turn it into a form once it's printed out and ready to go. Again, closing the shape. So relatively quickly, I'm able to create a pretty comprehensive net that resembles my drawing pretty accurately. It's probably even more accurate than when I hand drew it. Now that I've got this, I can turn off the grid to see what it looks like, and I think it looks like a pretty good net. What I want to do is I want to add a background color, and I'm going to show you quickly how you can do that. Using the layers panel on the right-hand side, the two little diamonds stacked on top of each other. If that layers panel is not there, you can go to window and you can go to layers from the drop-down menu. What I want to do is I want to duplicate that layer. So I'm going to click and drag layer 1 into this little plus symbol. Yours may look like a little folded piece of paper. And I'm going to lock layer 1, which has the original drawing, and turn the eye off so I can monitor my progress. I'm going to work on layer 1 copy, delete the little photo because I don't need it there. And I'm going to select all my design using Control and A. So I'm going to zoom out to make that a bit more visible. So all my design is completely selected. I'm then going to use the shape builder tool in our toolbar, which is over here, the shortcut for which is Shift M. I'm going to click on that, and that allows me to draw a line through all my panels like so. And as you can see, as I draw a line through them, they get highlighted in gray. And that means that when I let go of my mouse, it's one large shape, which is really, really, really helpful. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this is because underneath I can keep my original layer line work like so I can keep track of what panels are what. What's the front, what's the side, what's the back, etc. But it also means that when I print it and I don't want any of the lines on it anymore, I can simply turn off or delete that layer and I can print it out and assemble it without any of the obstructions. It also means that if I click this outline that I've done, I can give it a nice solid color. For this one, I'm going to use a nice bright kind of coral. And we can see that it looks really, really strong and vibrant. And again, turning on my line work when I need it, but you can see that I need to rearrange my layers a little bit. I'm going to drag the original layer 1 on top so I can monitor the line work nice and consistently. That's going to be really important as I create my design. Now that you've got your netting, you can then add your other features that look like this. We can see how I've easily added patterns and type across my design, which has made it a lot more engaging than how it originally looked. I've also used layers to kind of place different parts of the design. So the graphics and typeface I put on a separate layer that I can turn on or off. And again, the lines on top so I can see how everything is positioned. When I do want to print my final design, I will delete layer 1 and I'll make sure that I save the file as a PDF, which will print a lot better. Now you need to go off and add those nice features to your design. You might add features like nutritional panels. You could add out, cut out windows and so forth. Good luck.